Broadcasting from various countries around the world using voice over IP technology, this is VoIP Uncovered, a VoIPon Solutions UK podcast. I'm Kathleen Reed.
Joining us today is Suzanne Bowen. Her business and technical background is an eclectic mix of VoIP, social media marketing, public speaking, internet security, documentation, and teaching English. Organizations she has worked with include Zytel Selec, Vonage, Publishers Circulation Fulfillment, State of Florida, Astrocom, Block DOS, and thousands of global IP communications companies via Super Technologies, and DidX, which she co-founded in 1999 with Rahan Alawala Ahmed.
Today we're going to discuss internet security threats such as DDoS or distributed denial of service, the need for proactivity all year round, but especially during the holiday seasons for banks and retailers. But we'll also focus on the potential of DDoS on VoIP traffic. Welcome, Suzanne.
In most of your work life, you have found yourself in the teacher-trainer mode, whether in the classroom or on a blog, such as your TMC Monetizing IP Communications. Would you explain what DDoS is in a way that just about anyone can understand?
Wow. Let's see. Graham Cluley, he's a senior technology consultant for an antivirus company called Sophos. I read somewhere where he once compared a DDoS attack to 15 fat men trying to get through a revolving door at the same time. So I get that picture in my head. They're all trying to get through, and they're all going to get through eventually, but it's pretty messy. But really, DDoS is an acronym for Distributed Denial of Service, and it's like where multiple sources take actions over the Internet to stop service from occurring at their target or targets. They have a single target or sometimes multiple ones. And then the target or targets can be anything on the Internet, such as blogs, websites, VoIP traffic. They could belong to banks, retailers, government entities, VoIP companies themselves, and so on. So I'm thinking, because the sources where the attacks are coming from are multiple, it makes it really difficult to detect those sources and then to block them. So a DDoS attack can stop legitimate traffic, like what you and I are doing right now, could cause something that feels like a network meltdown, make customers leave your business forever and choose competitors because your website keeps going down, And, of course, that destroys the company's reputation permanently sometimes. Customers don't really care what happened to one's company during the DDoS attack. They simply know that your service or website was down because of a lack of security, and that's pretty scary.
Sure is. So let's talk about the DDoS attacks on banks, and then we'll switch to those that target VoIP traffic.
Okay. Kathleen, from October 16th through October 18th, BB&T Corp., HSBC Holdings, and Capital One were pummeled by DDoS attacks. And during the next 5 weeks, I believe, I might have this wrong, but I'm pretty close, more targeted U.S. banks, such as Bank of America, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, PNC Bank, U.S. Bank Corp., SunTrust, and Regions Bank. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know who's responsible, nor why. I don't know. I have no idea. And I'm not going to repeat what everyone is saying on the Internet because, again, I don't know what's fact and what is conjecture. So there is evidence, though, that the denial of service attacks were originated from various geographical locations over this period of time.
I can see how that would lower the trust of corporate and personal account holders in these institutions.
Yeah, and Kathleen, in fact, just imagine yourself, you have great trust in this big bank where you have your checking account, savings account, and so forth. And the website is down for like an hour, and then a few hours later it's down again, and you hear it's a security problem. So as a result, many account holders cancel their accounts and move from their current bank service provider to competitors. A person doesn't need a technical college degree to understand that if these DDoS attackers can collaborate to make such high-profile big bank website or other service over Internet stop working because of too many pings, demands, the DDoS attacks at one time, they can also take advantage of the confusion for the bank IT teams during that time period, creating bank website intermittent outages with targeted queries can actually flood back-end transaction servers, and it could be a masquerade to conceal attempts to access customer accounts, customer information, gather intelligence or some other planned action.
What are some of the proactive steps to protect against and prepare for DDoS attacks?
I think that's probably the best that we're talking about at this point, because people do need to know. And I'm not the expert, but companies such as Blockdust have taught me quite a bit about Internet security in the past year. And these companies have experience and guidance ready for you, me, and podcast listeners to learn from. First, collaboration among the banks and their managed security service providers, especially DDoS mitigation service providers, should be proactive and should prepare to react smartly together with their customers against future attacks. Second, banks and other businesses, whether they have been attacked already or not, should educate the consumers just a little bit on the facts about DDoS and what the organization does to protect accounts. In fact, I was even thinking that they could share this podcast with their customers to get a little bit of information I think the way that you and I are going about it, Kathleen, is very easy to understand, So we all know that communication has the potential to assure, whereas the lack of it reduces trust. So the banks do need to talk about what's going on to the consumers, make sure they understand. The third, make sure that bandwidth is protected by vendors and is easily expandable. Last, make the smart move now, not when it's too late, to defend against potential attacks. Some of the words that they use are mitigation, protection, that type of thing. Could we talk maybe about the potential issues regarding DDoS and VoIP traffic now, Kathleen?
Sure. As I understand it, Ole Johansson, in a social network discussion about the relationship, said one problem is that VoIP is commonly handled by people with a telephony background, not a networking background or systems background. He mentioned that they are often taking unnecessary risks just because they have no training in network and system security. This is probably also the reason why SIP security is not implemented anywhere, really. During his 10 years of working with VoIP, he has only installed TLS certs for testing and not for protection.
Now, I thought that was pretty amazing, and I really appreciated Ole Johansson's input. Perhaps what has to be accomplished to implement typical SIP mitigation is not as important for some reason as that of the other types of mitigation we've already talked about. But I was thinking this doesn't mean that VoIP providers should not be prepared. Like Mr. Johansson also described the advantages of using open source platforms such as Asterisk and Camellia. There's like this network of people all over the world who are willing to participate in distributed denial of service attacks, we're learning. But there's also a huge cadre of open source telephony developers and security experts around the globe. They investigate code around the clock and fix the issues. So who's more organized and ready? Well, I'm thinking, love to see if the listeners would comment about that later and interact with us. Ollie also mentions that, for example, Asterisk has made changes over the years to avoid allocating resources on messages early on. And while I'm at it, let me stop and give credit to some in my professional networks, who are often in yours, Kathleen, for assisting me to gather information to share on this podcast in the area of DDoS potential on VoIP traffic. Dayton Turner, the CEO and co-founder of Vancouver-based Voxter Communications, participated. Ole Johansson, who is a VoIP, IM, and presence based on SIP and XMPP specialist. Book author Sue McKenzie from Singapore, and Yossi Nimman, free switch developer and the owner of Carta Solutions Incorporated. So I think we're really lucky to have so many people on our networks, Kathleen, who are willing to collaborate with us for things like this.
Oh, for sure. And I know you, Suzanne, and I do thank them also, and also VoIPon for sponsoring this audio podcast interview. A typical problem with voice over Internet is no-call audio after 30 to 60 seconds. The most common response is something like, it's probably caused by the building router. So just log in to it, look for the following settings: DDoS, denial of service, flood protection, intruder protection. The customer might be told that if they find any of these settings, turn them off.
And I'm thinking back when Super Technologies offer the services of Superphone and so forth. I do remember customers having issues like this, and, it had something to do with NAT traversal. I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, but I remember this certain terminology all the time, and having to log in and change things within the router to not block voice over IP, but voice over IP. Well, let me go back. First, let me say I appreciate VoIPon, too, from what you said in the beginning. And I wish that they would record more podcasts more often with different people on pertinent issues such as, equipment comparisons, which they're expert at, internet security, open source news, and mixing IP communications with social media. Now, when I was talking about the superphones, devices, and so forth, and the problem with the routers and the networks, I know what you mean about that. Routers tend to label SIP calls as like a sudden flood of traffic. So it automatically cuts the call after a certain number of seconds. So Mr. Neiman summarizes the situation really well. He said, think of it in terms of SMTP. If you want to be able to receive any number of anonymous inbound calls for business or other reasons, you seriously hamper that ability to receive that inbound traffic if you start implementing a lot of security measures that are currently available. So, by the way, I was wondering if you would tell us a little bit more about VoIPon. They're the ones sponsoring this podcast before we close out. Kathleen?
Sure. VoIPon distributes a market-leading range of VoIP hardware and services to businesses around the world. VoIPon has consistent customer service and end-to-end support, which really helps them build solid relationships. They help businesses choose the right system, be it open source, proprietary, hosted, and the company's extensive range and knowledgeable staff make their customers' jobs really easy. VoIPon staff has extensive knowledge and understanding of their products, and they use the same technologies that they sell, and they are great at tailoring solutions to any customer's budget requirements. So when customers are looking for a great value, they choose VoIPon. So we really want to thank you, Suzanne, and the folks at BlockDOS for participating in this podcast.
Well, thank you, too. And I did visit the VoIPon website, and I love how that they have a great variety of equipment to choose from. They have an excellent knowledge base. I studied it a little bit. And thanking you, your company, Big Box Marketing, and VoIPon. I know that I really enjoyed this talk, and the BlockDOS, BLOCKDOS.net team.
Well, thanks again, Suzanne. This has been a VoIPon Uncovered podcast brought to you by VoIPon Solutions. For more information, please visit www.voipon.co.uk.